and welcome to Field Notes, and today we have a slightly different video than ones that we will normally have on this channel, mostly because the script for the one that I want to film is not done yet. So today I thought I would answer some of my most frequently asked questions. So I thought I would make kind of a broad answer for a lot of these. So a few of you have been a little bit curious about what I actually studied in college. I do have my degree in geology as well as a degree in anthropology. So I have a basic geology degree, and I didn't get a specialization like we were kind of able to choose. I chose general geology because of two factors. One, because I didn't think that I wanted to pursue geology past my bachelor, and two, because I really wanted to create a good base of learning all of the kind of subfields of geology, mostly for this channel and for teaching purposes in the future. So what I did actually study is I studied geochemistry and geophysics, two courses that I will definitely be talking about a little bit later in the video. I also did a seminar on fracking and kind of how that whole thing works, which is much more convoluted than what we see in the media on both sides. I've studied like a wide variety of things. I do not have a specialization in one type or another. Another question that I get asked a lot is what was my hardest course? And that, for me, without a doubt, is always going to be my geophysics course. I took a geophysics course my final year there, and it was so hard. It was so hard. So I got the concepts, right? I understood the concepts, I could do the math. It wasn't anything that really challenged me that way. What was incredibly challenging was we were supposed to use a program that acts a lot like programming. It's MATLAB's fault. I have zero experience in programming. I do not know any the computer languages at all. I don't know how to code. However, this program required you to know a little bit about coding to be able to make it do what you want it to do. For anybody who has used it, it's not very intuitive. It's a little confusing if you don't have anybody teaching you how to use it. We were supposed to be creating graphs and things that kind of showed like the temperature variation depending on depth of how when you got in here, so you had to plug in the equation and make MATLAB actually do it. I could tell you just by doing the math where it would be at certain depths, but that's kind of not what you were supposed to do. You had to actually like make it draw the graph. I had to spend all day, like from when I got to school, when I had to go to that class, and then I would stay after school several hours to work on this program because I couldn't get it to do what I wanted it to do. It was incredibly satisfying when I finally got it to work. I remember being in my physics course and being like, I know how to write the code for how to make it do what I want it to do. And it was so satisfying to actually sit there, and I wrote down the code in my notebook. Then I took it to the computer lab because we only had a certain number of computers that had this program on it. So I took it to the computer lab, plugged it in, and it worked. And I remember being so ecstatic about getting it to work. So that was definitely the hardest course that I have ever taken. Kind of in line with that, what is the easiest course that you took? My answer is going to be weird, I'm sure, because for a lot of the kids that I went to school with, this was their hardest course, and I don't know if that is just a factor of me trying really hard, I'm not sure. One of the first real geology courses that I took past my intro courses was structural geology, and I loved structural geology. I got it, I understood why things did what they were doing. It was all very like, look at this picture. Do you see this? What does that mean? And I was like, oh yeah, duh, it's because this rock is at this temperature, and it just all made really like a lot of sense to me. First couple weeks were like rough because it was the first time I had taken a geology course, and my counselor had actually basically warned me and said, okay, well, we're just gonna put you into structural and throw you to the lions. So I was expecting it to be very hard, which I think is part of the reason why I found it so enjoyable, is because I was expecting it to be very hard, and I got it quicker than I was anticipating. Now, structural geology is not like everybody's favorite. This is not by any means like an easy course, but for me it was very enjoyable because I was expecting it to be very hard, and it just for some reason worked with my brain. Another question that I get asked a lot is kind of in the same vein as these, is what was your most enjoyable course? Now, I enjoyed quite a few of the courses, however, one that I really enjoyed was geochemistry. So I took a low-temp geochemistry course, which focuses a lot on inorganic, which is a chemistry that I'm very comfortable with. So I really enjoyed that. It was incredibly challenging. It was an incredibly challenging course. We had very long take-home tests, which I mean, everybody always loves when they're take-home tests, but that's a trick. That is a trick that college professors play on you, because you were like, yeah, I want it to be a take-home test. No, you don't. No, you don't want it to be a take-home test. Chemistry always seems to have the feel of, I can work backwards to this result as well as working forwards, and if you get the same one, you know you're on the right track. So this is the reason I've always really loved chemistry, kind of as a general subject. So taking low temperature geochemistry was something that I was very interested in when I started. So that was obviously like a personal choice for me. Moving on, one other thing that I get asked quite a bit is about field camp. Now that's probably because I've made several videos about field camp and what I thought I was going to bring to field camp, and then I came back and I did kind of a recap of what worked at field camp. So in my case, you could choose not to go to field camp if you didn't want to. That did, however, mean that you weren't getting the Bachelor of Science, because you also weren't taking a couple of the other courses. You weren't taking a couple geology courses, you also weren't taking, I think, some math. I wanted my Bachelor of Science, so I decided to go to field camp, and field camp was always something that had, like, vastly intimidated me, because I'm a kind of a bookworm. I'm good at, like, book knowledge of things. I didn't know how well that was going to translate into practical knowledge. So field camp was very intimidating for me. I wasn't like a really big hiker before I went, but I have been asked quite a bit if you should do field camp. And I am always going to say yes. When I got home right away, I'd be like, screw it, don't do it, get your BA, it doesn't matter. Field camp is really for people who really like geology. A lot of things start to make sense when you're at field camp. And part of the allure, I would say, for me was that it was literally the capstone. It was literally what I did at the very end. It was the summer that I graduated. I didn't have any other courses to go and take. A lot of the kids that I went to field camp with did actually have to go back to school and take like another year and a half of courses. I really liked the fact that I got to take it right at the end. That was all I had to do left, was to do this. And I feel like a lot of the things made a lot more sense because I got to do it at the very end, and I've already seen the book explanation as to why this will happen. So field camp, I do think is worth it. I do think it's worth the amount of money that you pay. It is kind of expensive. Do your research on what field camp you want to go to. I went to the field camp that I went to because it was the one offered by my school. A lot of schools do not have their own field camp, which will lead to different requirements being about geology majors. A lot of the kids I went to field camp with didn't actually need it. The hardest part of field camp for me was not the work. The hardest part of field camp was getting over the stress of messing up and not being able to hike. So I had a really horrendous asthma attack. I don't really have asthma. I have an inhaler because when I run, sometimes I get short of breath. But I don't have, like, you know, stereotypical asthma. But at field camp, my body was just like, yeah, you're just gonna have an asthma attack now. Have fun with this. Also, now you can't hike for 2 days. Another thing that I'm asked is, what do you need to start a geology degree? And really what I started with was nothing. I started with nothing. They will tell you what you need. If you are somebody who wants to have like a set, like a little kit of things that you are going to use for your geology career, there's two big things. One of them is going to be a rock hammer. I didn't get mine until I needed to go on field camp, and they're like, yeah, get a rock hammer. And I was like, okay. East wings are really good. You want to get one that's got a blunt end and as well as a pick end. There are two different types depending on what rock type you are going to be encountering. However, the majority of the stuff that you are going to want to be breaking off, this kind of rock hammer is going to be your friend because it works for both. The second thing that you could probably get that is a hand lens. A hand lens is basically, it's the same thing as a jeweler's ring. Is that what they're called? Jeweler's rings? So you can look at things closer up. I had a 10 times magnification one, worked fine, don't need anything stronger than that. I did have a couple friends who had 20 and 30s. Those are the two things that I would say if you want to have like your geology starter kit, get those two. Anything else that you are like, you need to have. Hiking shoes, don't need them until you are expected to go hiking. You mean there's like a ton of different things that you could buy. Most notably, people are going to talk about Brunton compasses. You do not need one of those unless somebody tells you to buy one, because those are expensive. They're like $500–600 for a compass, basically. And while you do use them a lot, you do not need to own one, because a lot of the time they are provided. And if they're not provided, you can rent them. So don't buy one, because they're incredibly expensive, very easy to break, and most of the time you won't need to buy your own. Somebody will give you one to use. I get asked a lot if I should major in geology. Just blanket, should I major in geology? I really find X, Y, or Z interesting. Here's my piece of advice. Kind of broad, your results may vary sort of advice. If you love biology, major in biology. If you love geology, major in geology, because that is how you are going to find the most amount of happiness in college. Major in something that you like. Do not major in geology thinking that right when you get out of college you will have a job. That is something that I think that a lot of people really overestimate with geology, is because geology majors have a fairly high employment rate after graduating. Because people think that as soon as you graduate with a degree in geology, you're going to be able to be employed by an oil company and make a bunch of money. That's not usually the case. That's not really what geology majors end up doing after they graduate. Most of it is working for governments and working for, you know, local companies doing environmental things, which if that's what you are okay with, then you're great, then you're grand, but you're not going to get out and make a ton of money right away. You're going to have to, you know, pay your dues. So there you have it. Those are some of the basic questions that I get asked quite a bit. If you have any more questions or would like me to do another one of these videos, leave questions down below or tweet them at me, or follow my Instagram where I post weird pictures of stuff, and feel free to ask me questions there. I might make another video about just Q&A. So if you have any questions that are geology related, college related, anthropology related, whatever related, me related, just leave them down below. Remember, if you like this video, make sure you like it, subscribe if you would like to see more, and I will see you next time. Bye!
Up it is.
Oh no, 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 no.
What was that? I can't stop it. We're going up.